It's always good to see you. And
Always good to see you.
thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you. Don, the you grow up in Africa. Dad passes away when you're an infant. Dad is of African descent, Nigerian
Nigerian,
descent.
correct? Yeah,
Mom is Filipino. So mom's in Africa. You've got an older sister. She's got two young kids, single mother, doesn't understand the language, does is learning the culture, and here she is raising two young kids. You guys are in Africa for 13, 14 years. Mom decides that she's going to immigrate to Winnipeg, Canada.
correct.
She brings you and your sister to Canada. You're 14 years of age. It's different. You're faced with all sorts of challenges. There's the cultural diversity, there's the language, there's many different factors. And not having a father, I'm sure, also played a factor in this. So you're adjusting to, well, I should mention the temperature change as well. You're just
Yes,
to all these different things. You're doing your best to navigate life. You come to Canada, you're the new kid on the block, so to speak, and you find something that's appealing and somewhat exciting in drugs and alcohol.
well, that's it. I mean, we can go as far back as in Nigeria. I think when the experimentation began with cigarettes, and prior to coming to Canada, they already experimented with smoking Indian hemp. So it's a different form of saying their form of weed, right? And so yeah, coming to Canada, the culture shock part of it and the freedom, I think, was what made me experiment quite a bit. But it's hard to pinpoint it down to maybe later down the road we could discuss about where the no father comes into play. But because some of the people that I did things with, they had their fathers around, so that causes or it made me ignore that fact for a very long time, right? But come to think about it, the most of us, even when the fathers was present, they weren't present at that time when we were hanging around and experimenting. Let's just say.
So you really kind of start to experiment with different types of substances
Mhm.
around the age of 14.
Correct, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it started with learning how to smoke properly. And I remember when I was coming to Canada, everybody was sad. We're all my friends, okay, we're going to promise not to smoke ever again. And so you're in a new environment, and that freedom, like I said, I saw a student smoking in front of the principal, and I thought this is crazy stuff, because we used to be held in an assembly and publicly flogged every Mondays in front of the school for such behaviors. And I thought the freedoms was too much. But I thought, let me experiment with this and let me see what happens. So I was able to smoke freely, and so that's the beginning of I think the earliest sort of thing that I got addicted to. So I don't know how that ties into having a personality of addiction, because you give somebody the right substance and they could be addicted without the personality can develop from their habits, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you're talking smoking, you're talking cigarettes, tobacco at this point.
It started with cigarettes, correct, at 14, 15. Then and alcohol, I tried wine and beer when I was 14 or 15, and I got drunk a few times, and but that wasn't my thing. The taste wasn't great. The headaches was not something I enjoyed. And so it came back later on when I was 17, 18 to the drinking.
Okay.
Yeah, with the cigarettes, and the combination of that was something that I seemed to indulge in. It was it's quite enjoyable, actually.
Maybe
Mhm.
unpack that piece for us and for the audience. How sort of what the attraction was, what led you to this and sort of how it developed to the point where at one point it was a runaway train.
You mean the cigarettes and alcohol?
The alcohol and the drugs.
Well, okay, I'll start with the cigarettes and I'll move on to the drug. The cigarettes was just more of a, I think it was more like a statement of I was grown, right? And I was in a nation that I wasn't going to face any punishment for smoking anywhere in front of anybody. And so I would buy cigarettes and I just enjoyed smoking. Uh, but then later came the chest pains and stuff like that. But then with alcohol, it was the same thing where you're with friends, you catch a mild buzz, you tie that in with a cigarette, and what a great feeling. Some people associate that almost with like coffee and cigarettes. And you know, when we had so much time in our hands, running around and skipping school and all that stuff, we tend um, to look to that as a great pass of time, right? Drinking and smoking, and you could smoke indoors in some apartments in Winnipeg, and that was what we did. We got together, and as long as there was booze, weed, cigarettes, we were all in. And so with the smoking part, I had asthma growing up as a kid, but when I came to Canada, I think the climate change had it made my asthma a little bit more mild. And
Okay.
yeah, so I was able to smoke, but all along I knew that it was doing damage because my mom would always talk about irreversible damage to my health, right? So that stayed in me, and the weed became almost like uh, almost every day I was smoking weed, and then at one point, you know, it's smoking weed and drinking alcohol. And I tell you, when I look back, I don't know um, how I was able to manage that. Maybe it was just my brain was young, my stamina was different, but the combination of having 8 to 10 beers and smoking three, 4 joints, it gets really, really heavy on the head, right? Yeah.
How long did that period of your life last?
Um, the the weed and alcohol started around 17, 18 when we started going to clubs and okay, drinking was something to do, right? And to quench your thirst or whatever. And so that became a habit. And it lasted for a very long time. With the weed, I had quit smoking weed because I was coughing too much. But then I picked up on the drinking side. Um, I made up for it on the drinking side. And then at one point I would quit drinking, and then I'd say, well, weed is a better choice, right? So overall, the alcohol lasted over 20 plus years, if not more. And but the cigarettes, I quit cigarettes once for 13 years, right? And I got a construction job, and here we go again. You're stressed out, and it's easy to pick these habits back up if you're not careful or have certain kind of cues or skills to deal with the kind of stress that you're under, right?
How bad did it get, Don, when it was at its worst?
You know, Dustin, the main thing I want to talk out of everything, I've tried everything. You know, I've snorted. It was a pill called Mogadon, and it was used to calm the people in a mental institute. I've tried that. I've tried. I'm not one for pharmaceuticals, but I've tried different sort of pills, and the combination of pills and alcohol too. It's a little heavy. But how the coke came in was it came through you listen to music that endorses these things or promotes a combination of coke and weed made my eyes bleed or made my nose bleed or whatever the song was. And when you're into music like this, you sort of you want to go into new boundaries or stretch your boundaries of freedom and choice to do whatever you want, right? So it started off by lacing weed with cocaine. And at one point, I was selling cocaine, just small time, nothing major. And so I got to witness a lot of people And these people were very, very close to us. So we had a good market share in the west end of town because we had good relations with the clients, or so we called them, right? And we knew them by name. We knew where they lived because we do visits sometime, and we hang with these people. We drink with them, we relax with them, and I got to see people from all walks of life. And one thing that's sad about drugs is, it doesn't discriminate. When I watch the show Intervention, it saddens me because there's no discrimination to how somebody's child could get caught up into that. So going back to the lacing cocaine, you lace cocaine, or you do what they call a cocoa puff, where you loosen the tobacco of a cigarette, you remove the filter, and you pull in the cocaine into it, and you sort of heat the cigarette and melts it, and then you smoke it that way. And it has such a great. I used to love the aroma of that, and it gives you like somewhat like a wake up rush. And so you try that, and then now you're getting desensitized to the fact that cocaine is considered a hard drug. And so at one point we started cooking this cocaine, and in some parts they call it crack, where you cook it and it turns into a solid form and pretty much cleans up the dirty part of the cocaine, because cocaine is mixed. And so it's a cleaner form of smoking it anyhow. And so when I tried that, I first tried it when I was 19. It was in my weed, and I just couldn't get anything out of it. It's like the weed didn't hit me, and they call it rocks. Didn't hit me. So I said, okay, well, let's see what this is all about. Let's try it all straight. So I experimented with that, and bam, I was hooked on it for about a year and a half. But the thing with me being hooked on it was, listen, I had the money to do it every day. I was It was nothing to dispose of 250 to $300 daily to feed my habit and pay my bills and everything. So I was in a dangerous place without even knowing it.
How long did that period last for?
The experimentation, I would call it, lasted for a year, and then I knew I snapped out of it because going back to my mom being a widow and experiencing pain. She shared some of her pain, which was I think a great tool for me, in terms of, I wasn't going to be the first Nigerian to come to a foreign country, or a Filipino to come into a country of milk and honey and wind up being like that. And so I had this thing in me, and also, like, I believe in God, right? So for me, uh, having that as my background gave me this a strong will. And I think I inherited that from my mother too, where my will was just strong, and it wasn't going to be me. I was going to snap out of this. And so, with any addictions, or with a few addictions that I've had, and how I managed to kick that habit is, you got to wait your moment. You gotta plan it. You keep planning. Failure is okay. You wait these moments, and when the opportunity hits, I've quit some major stuff, maybe about 4 or 5 times in my life, but each time was the same. I knew that all I needed was one day, and I took that one day and I ran with it, because it was that my personality is, if I'm going to indulge in something and I can afford it, I would want to do it all the time. So out of all these drugs that I've mentioned to you, I would like to throw in there that, in my opinion, alcohol was probably one of the worst of them all. And I've had a friend who he owned an auto shop, and he went in to for the usage of crack. Most of his clients were all dealers, so the guy got hooked, and he went in. But when he came out of rehab, one of the best mechanics I know, actually, when he came out of rehab, he mentioned to me that he says, "Don't feel sorry for me." He was from the West Indies, and he goes, "You think I had it bad on crack?" That some of the people that he saw in there that was suffering were those who were just drinkers because it was legal. And I think he was in there with a franchisee owner, I guess one of the owners of a hockey team or something, who was losing his wife, his children, and everything. So that's what he mentioned to me. And over my years of experimenting with certain things, alcohol was the slowest of the deceiver. So alcohol, one could be a functioning alcoholic, socially accepted. When you're on crack, you're hiding from people that don't do it, right? When you're in weed, you try not to smell like it all the time. Certain things, right? But alcohol was by far one of the most dangerous of them all. And in order, the second time around, which I'll touch on quickly, is after having all those experiments and experiences. I don't know if it's. I think I have some personalities that may cause that, but I also think that some drugs do. It's in their chemical form to make somebody continue to want them. So the second time around was when I was going through a really rough time. I was going through a separation. And in separations, people do get hurt. Words are not accurate. My mom was diagnosed with cancer at the time. Yeah, things were just rough. And so when I went back to tend to my mother in Winnipeg, I didn't realize how cancer worked. I thought she'll be fine, right? And she ended up passing away on her birthday, actually. And even on her dying day, she mentioned, I guess God had given her the strength to tell me, to look me in the eyes and tell me, because she was hyperventilating. And I was just at her place drinking wine, and I thought she was going to get out of that. And once she called me, I was at a friend's, and she called me because she had to use the washroom. So I took a cab down, and then she was diagnosed with hydromorphine, and she was shaking, and she said, "Look what these drugs are doing to me." And I thought, Mom, it's normal because people do get a little bit. If it's speed, it's going to do that, right? But I didn't realize that her body weight was too. She had probably lost about 100 pounds, and so the day she fell into cardiac arrest, she was trying to remove her oxygen mask and all that stuff. She tried 3 times. So she was in the hospital hyperventilating, and she took the time to look at me. There was a calm that came, and she was normal. And she took the time to look sideways. I was sitting down, and she says, "Don, I think I'm going to die today." Then she goes, "Anak." Anak in Tagalog means my child or child. She goes, "It's okay, huh?" She looks at me, she says, "It's okay." And then I said, "Oh, Mom, we'll be out of here in no time." And then she looked at me, looked back at the ceiling, and she fell into hyperventilation again, or she started hyperventilating again. And so she was supposed to go to the x-ray. And so when we took her to x-ray, I told the x-ray lady, she took her into the x-ray room. I said, "You got to watch her. She's removing her oxygen mask." And I waited for about 10, 15 minutes. When she came out, they were wheeling her back to where they took her from. And she was calm. And I said, "See, Mom, I told you you'll be fine." And when they turned her around, that's when I realized that her eyes, I think life had left her body. And I told the doctor, I said, "Look, I think she's gone." And he goes, "Yeah, she is." And so at that moment, it was a moment that not having a father, tying it back to not having a father, and just having my mom as the sole guardian and the only parent I had, that was a day that I always knew was coming. And finally, here it is, right? So losing my mom that day was like losing my mother and father because I didn't know any better, right? And I didn't know she was going to die. So what ended up happening, because I was already experimenting, I've done blow before. So here I'm back again, doing some cocaine. But I really never liked snorting cocaine because when you snort cocaine, it clears up your sinuses. You get this minty feel in your nostrils and stuff like that, and then it blocks your nose. And so you start to develop. Some people's nose gets eaten away, right? So you start to develop this major sinus And I thought, well, we're not going to do it that way. We're going to cook this stuff and we're going to smoke it. And so went back, smoked it, and oh, my sinuses was gone. And then you just get hooked into this sensation or the habit of forgetting. And I was using it as an escape. So I wasn't thinking about. I knew my mom had just died, and so when you're on drugs, you're lost in your own thoughts, everything but what just happened. And yeah, I was even in the same room that her, because I was in her, like it was an old folks home, I think, a 1 bedroom apartment or a bachelorette or something like that. And I smoked so much that I started hearing some noises coming from the heater vent, and it's either some supernatural, or either I was high as heck, or it was the neighbor banging on the vent because they could smell. Like cocaine has a sweet aroma, but it does have an aroma, a distinguished smell to it, right? And so I got trapped into that. That one lasted 2 years or so, or a year and a half, something along those lines. 2 years. I was drinking a lot when I didn't have, and the thing with these drugs, when you do so much and you don't have, you become irate, right? You're just irritated, and sometimes it's physical where you feel like flu-like symptoms, depending on the way you take it. Like a lot of people who use it intravenously, their stomach starts to pain them, right? And they get massive headaches and stuff. But my experience was just the flu-like symptoms and the like you getting a cold or something like that. And I continued with that, and it came to a point where I finally got broke, right? Because it was never a problem when you have money, but then now you don't have money, and you're thinking of every thought is to how you're going to get more, because it's an escape, right? And so just like many times before, I knew what I needed to do, and I said, if this got worse, I knew the last result was to check myself in, and I was going to be victorious. But in my drunken stupor and my season of doing hard drugs, I also experimented with meth. You know, everything was cloudy, right? The brain is funny at justifying uh, why you're doing what you're doing, even if it's wrong, as long as there's no pain. You know.
Yes, yes.
So I experimented with meth, and I'm just grateful that it just never did anything to me. I tried it maybe about 4 or 5 times, and waiting to get a reaction, and all 5 times it just never did anything.
You know, Don, Danelle and I have had the privilege of interviewing a lot of people, and one of the common themes that we've found, and I knew as a professional, it's a theme that we neither of us have ever met a an addict of any sort, whether it's a chemical addiction or a process addiction, that the addiction wasn't birthed out of pain. Is that true for your story as well?
It could be, but the thing is, it's very hard to pinpoint. It's hard to, I guess individually, it is so, but it's hard to pinpoint where that pain comes from. So so that's why it's very tricky, because one has to unpack what's going on. And when you're in the world of people who do all these things, it starts up by socializing. You're normal. Everything is great. You're just indulging. You like your heights. You like the lows. Some people like speed. Other people like things to calm them. Some people like psychedelics. So you're in this realm of social gathering or whatnot. But when you find that it starts to interfere with how you want to be, but you can't, because now this is the addiction part, is you have to go back. Maybe it was that one time that you cried for something and never got it, right? Or when you were 4 years old and you wanted a toy that your parent wouldn't buy you. Maybe it comes from there. Or for some people, it comes from an absent parent, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
We would respectfully suggest that it comes from it's a deep, deep internal pain. It's a longing. There's an absence there. Hence where this escapism comes in, where these these behaviors and these choices are to pacify the wound, essentially.
Yes.
And it just, the wound never goes away, so it constantly has to be pacified. But of course, tolerance builds up, and you know where it leads from there.
So another tricky thing is that wound that we talk about, in my opinion, could come as a form of a high performer, right? You're so used to performing at the level, and you've impressed people, and then all of a sudden, you find yourself mingling with people and doing drugs, and now it's like you're not going to say that I never had a dad or a mom or was abused, but it comes from just that that what do they call it, a personality trait of wanting to do better, right? I think.
Personality trait, I would strongly suggest it comes down to self-esteem and self-respect,
Gotcha.
which was lost in the process, and their identity was wrapped up in whatever it was, performing highly, whether it be at sports or career,
Correct.
and that's been removed, and they feel like they're standing there naked. I don't know who I am.
Correct. I was fortunate, Dustin, that there was no shortage of self-esteem. I was athletic. So for me, it was sometimes it's just a poor choice you make, and you make a few poor choices, and bam, you're in it, right?
Addictions, maybe. Did you ever find yourself in legal trouble?
Well, I did, in a lot of trouble actually. Well, not compared to the peers that were around me, but I did. I got myself. I think I'm actually one of the last person to go to jail for a roach. And if you don't know what a roach is, do you know what a roach is, Dustin?
Maybe explain it to the audience.
So, so a roach is after when you smoke a joint or a blunt, and you butt it out, and whatever is left over is considered the roach, right? It's yeah. And sometimes you break open roaches and then you make a new blunt, and because of the resin from the smoke, it just makes it a little bit more potent, right? So I had a roach in my mouth. I was at the house. The police went to check out, or they were raiding the house, or something like that. And I completely forgot because I just had the habit of smoking, that it was in my mouth when I opened the door. And the officer grabs it. He goes, "Thank you. I'll take that from you." And he grabs the roach out of my mouth, and he puts me under arrest. I didn't go to jail for that, but I went to the remand center for failing to appear in court for that purpose. So I spent, plus I had pending charges. So I spent 30 days as time served in the remand center for yeah, having a roach, and then go figure, it becomes legal. We used to carry like a quarter or a half ounce of weed, and you thought, oh, this is big deal.
Little did you
Yeah.
know roach is going to get you in trouble. Don, did it cause you to lose any of your jobs?
No, no,
You're able
not
to
at all.
maintain
I
that.
wasn't. I wasn't. I had ways of making money that I wasn't working and doing drugs. It was hard for me to do those kind of things. I wouldn't keep a job, but I I drank when I came back to Calgary. I was drinking a lot, and I had a job at a dealership, and I just didn't take it serious. And with the problem with drinking is, I would have my nightcap, as they call it, after work, and I did that for a whole year and a half. I was great. I was going to the gym. I come home, have one glass of wine before shower, and then the kids go to bed. I eat dinner with another glass. Perfect. Sleep well. But I did that for a whole year and a half, and all it takes is a trigger moment before that glass and a half or two glasses becomes a whole bottle. And yeah, then it made it harder to work the next day for sure, right? But I've never actively done drugs and work, right? So that's kind of like,
You were telling me a story some time ago that at one point the drinking was so extreme that you would have a bottle of whiskey on your nightstand and
yes.
you drink it. Are you
Yeah,
okay?
you remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
are
you
you okay
remember
to
that.
share that story?
Yeah, well, okay, so going back to like the 8 o'clock, the timing, it was 8 o'clock after work, perfect, nightcap or a couple beers, nothing wrong. Go check the neighbors, see what's going on. The kids are great. They came back from sports. I still played sports. But then that time when I went through my separation, divorce, I realized that the time went from 8 o'clock, then it was 4 o'clock, then it was by 2 o'clock, and then you get the shakes. You're when you hold out your hand shakes. Then it became 2 hours after I woke up that I needed, and once you have a drink, it's gone, right? So I was drinking so much that, and I worked at a dealership, and goodness, man, can you imagine you're selling vehicles, and in some cases you're test driving and you're under the influence. Um, and I remember once somebody had left some drinks in the fridge, and that's why I don't promote that at any workplace, especially one like that. So I took a bottle of beer and I said I was going to down this quickly before somebody came in the lunchroom, and I started to regurgitate this beer, and I put my head over the sink. Oh, it was rough. Washed my face quickly and took a deep breath and geared up to push this thing right back because it had to get in me, right? And I thought that was one of the moments where I thought, wow, what kind of sickness is this? And so it came to a point where the dependency, because I think people do it for first it's recreational, then it becomes self-medicating and running away from anxiety or whatever it is, right? And it came to a point where I was sleeping, and I remember every time I go to bed, I would have a bottle, whether it's whiskey or wine, right at the night table. And on my way to the washroom or on my way back to bed while I used the washroom, I would take a swig, or I started drinking wine from the bottle actually. And I would wake up and I would have only 5 hours to sleep, and I would do that and wake up and go and work construction job the following day.
Incredible. That's incredible. You know, I concur with you about the drinking piece in that it's the most accepted addiction in society.
Mhm.
We drink alcohol when we're celebrating. We drink alcohol because it's a hot day. We drink alcohol because we're going to get together and catch up. We drink alcohol because we're mourning, the loss of something, and it's just so readily available. Don, you shared a story with me one time, and it was surprising to me that it wasn't enough to to shake you out of this addiction, if you will. It didn't scare you enough. The gentleman who you had, I'll butcher the story a little bit here, but
Oh yeah, I
you yeah
remember that.
you'd sold him drugs the day before, bought drugs from him the day before, and the next day he was deceased.
No, it didn't go quite like so, but I'll say it again. This guy had an apartment, and whenever you have drugs and you can't hang around friends, because there's a little bit of shame to it, so you find people or places that you can, especially in a cold winter day indoors, someone that allows you to smoke inside his house and has no worries of that. That's a perfect place to be. So this guy, a street guy, uh, when I say street guy, it's like he used to, you see him always on the street, and he wasn't like a major drug addict. He was more like a drinker. But he introduced me to a friend who had an apartment, and so we went to the apartment, and I had just a little bit of drugs. It wasn't enough anyway, so we did a few. It wasn't enough to go around. And then this gentleman, the owner of the place, I forgot his name, but he made a phone call he got a dial of dope, and then somebody delivered something. I paid for it and stuff like that, and we sat there and we were taking rounds of smoking this thing, and it wasn't good. And I just thought, man, they thought it was good, and I said, okay, well, you know what's going to happen tomorrow? If you're around, I'll get the good stuff, and I'll come back if you're up for it. And he's like, sure. So the following day, kept up to my promise. I went there. I was excited. I had probably about maybe 3.5 grams, and it's considered to be like an 8 ball or something like that. And I was knocking on his door, knock, 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 nothing. I started banging on his door, and there was no answer. So I decided to call his phone. Like, buddy, I'm outside, man. It's cold. So I called his phone, and some of the guy picked up, and let's just use Joe as his name. He says, Joe's no longer with us. I said, excuse me, I'm in front of the door. Could you tell him to open? Joe is dead, he says. I said, oh my goodness. He goes, yep. He took one hoot last night and fell into cardiac arrest. And I thought, and he goes, oh yeah, his sister's all pissed or something like that. And yeah, buddy. So yeah, Joe's no longer with us. Okay. And so I said, fine. And I just hung up, and I thought, man, that's crazy stuff. But there's another part of me, because I didn't know this guy too well, too, right? There's another part of me that was like, well, I've got almost all this to myself. I don't, with drugs, like, you don't think of, I gotta share it. You just think more for me. What am I gonna do? Like, I wanted to share. I was trying to be generous, but this guy's dead, and it didn't hit me that his death, because I didn't know him, perhaps. But then I started wondering, and then I sometimes would just walk around and have the pipe and smoke at bus stops, and just walk. And then you smoke till you're paranoid, and you think everybody's after you or something like that, or the cops are onto you. But I'll tell you another story quickly here. There's one time where I was living with a friend, and he was working midnights, and it was a great scenario. There was a garage, so I'd smoke in the garage, and you find all this gimmicky things to make the smoke go away, like exhaling through a toilet paper that's wrapped with Bounty, for example. And there's one time, and I used to break the pieces and hide them, and feel secure when there was enough for the evening or for 2 evenings. But the problem with that is it's never enough, because you can't go to sleep when you're on that's why people stay up for days. And I think I've done, maybe the maximum is maybe 50, 60 hours or something like that. But some people stay up for 5 days, right? But at one point, Dustin, I was shaking. I was, and I think that's partly because sometimes it gets your nervous system like that. I was shaking as I was trying to grab one piece, and I thought, oh man, this is not normal that I'm shaking like this. But I had enough. I had enough to kill myself 10 times over, right? And it never happened. I guess I was shaking, and I still did it, and I did more, and I did more, and you go more, and you're just wondering, like, man, like, that's a lot of stress on the heart, right? And man, I've been very fortunate, because for somebody who has done, my situation was different, but similar to a lot of people, where I had money enough to continue, right? So I didn't live the life of some addicts who don't, and have to go and steal or plot crimes to do that. I didn't have to do stuff like that, but I had enough money to kill myself over several times.
So Don, you saw a lot, you personally experienced a lot, and wasn't even the death of your one friend wasn't enough for you to quit. So what finally brought you out of this? How did you go from really being a very active addict, uh, out of control, reckless, irresponsible, to getting clean and sober?
Can I share some? I know we're punched for time, but this will be really quick.
Sure.
There was one time that I was in a by a pathway. There was a tree and a bush, and it looked like people at camp. And I was on top of a tree, and I was smoking. Oh, I felt so safe. There's nobody here, and my piece had fallen to the ground. So I went down, and it was probably like a gram. And everybody knows that when you're almost out, that gram means a lot. So I go downstairs. It was by the trunk of the tree. Or I'm digging, trying to find this thing, and all of a sudden my hands start smelling like urine. And I thought, and people had camped there before, and I knew that somebody had peed in that area, and I was still digging, looking for that piece and I thought, this is madness. So what made me snap out of it was the love that my family had for me, my cultural background, sharing two ethnicities, very, very powerful. The Filipinos, very, very powerful culture. And so with the Nigerians, right? Smart, they're loving, caring. My mom cared and loved me, and I had children that I knew that loved me, and my son at one point had he drove me to the drop-in center, and this is the same boy that followed me to Winnipeg. I love this boy dearly, and he was advocating for his sister. We got to get back to Calgary, Dad. My sister's there. So at the back of my mind, I had sense, and that stuff you develop early, and some people don't have that sense, and they're doomed for it. But I still had some sense, and I knew when I left Winnipeg the last time, I knew that I had to run away. So I phoned people up, and I reached out to about 10 people, and there's a few that ignored my message. It was very, very important time in my life. It was a very important time in my life because I needed to run away from that place. And when I mean run away, not that I did anything wrong, I just needed to disappear. And so some friends send me money, people that I just rode motorcycles with, and some people, that's how you know who your friends really are. And some just ignored my call. And so when I finally had enough money for a bus ticket, I hopped in the bus and I took off. And I was worried about my son that was still in Winnipeg, but we kept in contact, and he was 2 months behind me or 3 months behind me or something like that. And then when he came, I was involved in a bad relationship. So I knew that this had to stop somehow. This was not, again, the plan, right? And with any recovery, when you do the 12 step, I think the third step is the higher power. Is like a lot of people who are addicted to things, you got to find something, a higher power, something greater than yourself, right? And I think that's a tool or something that's very necessary for recovery. But I had a higher power, and one which is very, very strong actually. So I knew that I had to reach back to that. And when my son finally made it, I was happy. I had to um, leave that relationship that was keeping me in the same place. So I did. So I did that. And sometimes you just have to jump with 2 feet in without knowing how it's going to be. I went to detox a few times, a few failed times. I came out and relapsed maybe once or twice, but I knew that relapse is a very dangerous place to be because with the will that I have is like you're in or you're not. And so I went to a doctor actually, and the doctor helped me. Uh, she's a lady from Cameroon. She looked at me, and this is how love is very powerful. She looked at me as if she knew my mother because I told her everything, and she was from Africa too, and she looked at me with care, and I told her that all I needed was to sleep. I needed good sleep, and I just needed one day. So she prescribed me some drugs but she told me the side effects and how dangerous it was to get what do we call it, to get dependent on it. So she gave it to me for just 7 days and for me to return, and we were going to scale down. So first she gave me, I asked for Xanax, And so I was on Xanax. But the problem with Xanax is when I took it, I'm like, oh, I can see how this works. But the problem is I took 2 pills as prescribed. Then the next day I took 4. And then by the end of the week, I could eat this thing every hour or every 2 hours. So I just told her that I needed to sleep. So she prescribed some of the sleeping med for me. And you can't be addicted to those things. Well, I couldn't be because it's not my kind of high. I'm feeling sleepy. So I sleep, but when I woke up the next day, I was rejuvenated. And I played a lot of sports like basketball, soccer. So I knew that running helps. My mind takes me back to being out of breath, but having that mental focus to continue. So I did that, and I went back the next week, and then she scaled it down to a different kind of drug, and that was it. All I needed was that one day, and I took sobriety each day. I was very proud of those days, and I knew it was. I've heard one a person told me before, baby steps. So sometimes the words you hear when you're in your moments come back to you. And I heard baby steps, one day at a time, baby steps, one day at a time. So I did baby steps, and now I'm almost going on 9 years, 10 years.
Congratulations.
Alcohol and drug free, aside a couple occasions of experimenting with some psilocybin or whatever they call it, right? But the alcohol part, I knew I had to give up first, so I did that. And with this doctor, we worked out a plan, and it does work. If you're serious about sobriety, and you have people that love you and care for you, you go see a doctor, and they also can help. And you know what was funny about that is a year and a half later, I see the same doctor at church, and it's like she attends the same place I go to, and I was happy until I got to meet her husband, and her husband is a great mind. He's an entrepreneur, and he was actually an engineer, I think, by um, and he's a business trying to work on a business, and I enjoy conversations with him, and I always introduce people to her that sometimes doctors who care, and if you care enough, you know, it is possible. Yeah.
Absolutely. Don, how is life different for you today as a clean and sober man than it was when you were an active user?
Well, my thoughts are clear. I'm very, very certain and calculated about my thoughts. My decisions are they're very solid. The people I meet are not because when I was in my drunken stupor, it's almost like relationships are built on that, right? Even if you just drink once in a while, you're still getting together once in a while, camping, football game, UFC, or you're still actively drinking with the same people. But when I took 2 years and I had to start over with even rebuilding friendships with people, and the sincerity in this new life is much more um, attractive than what it was before. I'm straight. My thoughts, mainly my thoughts, mainly is how I regulate my emotions too. And I do have bad days. There are times where I just feel irate, and I think to myself, I say, wow. So these are the days where before it'd be like, meet up with a buddy. It's been 3 months, 4 months. Let's go have a drink. I don't get those days. I deal with those days, and after that, it builds a callus in personality, I think. And so just being, it took me about 8 months at first. First, it takes about maybe 3 weeks to be able to sleep properly, or to get in a groove of sleeping. Some people 3 months. Then it takes 8 months to start to see objectively see things clearer, like sight, vision, and you notice birds or the lines on a leaf or the blades of grass, stuff like. I thought I was getting a heart attack when that happened, but I was 8 months into sobriety. Then after 2 years, you're strong enough to see the difference. And 3 years, you're hanging around with people, seeing them do something that you used to do, and you just chose not to anymore because of the alternative, right? And I think now it's just something that that I won't trade for anything. I go to sleep with nothing. I don't need anything to enjoy a show or to go camping or I don't need anything. It's high on life, right?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely. Don,
I love better, right? My
yeah,
children, my
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So
You're
so
married to a beautiful lady,
oh, beautiful indeed,
smart
all
and
around.
successful, and
Mhm.
it's very robust. And I've had the privilege of meeting her and having
Yeah, yeah.
together, and that's it's just really encouraging, Don. Don, you're a walking, living, breathing example that because recovery isn't just possible, it's powerful. And for that, I thank you. And I thank you for sharing your story here today. And I sincerely hope that it's an encouragement to those who are watching and listening, who are struggling, who wonder, can I do this? Am I worth it? What's it going to take? Is there a way to get out of this?
The answer is yes, and there is hope. And I guess one just has to rehearse what day it is they're going to decide and what and that they have to do on their own. And once they do that, yes, once you decide it's something that you want to do, and the simple answer is you can do it. It
Amen.
is very, very possible. And you just have to take that leap of faith and one day at a time and baby steps. You count on baby steps. If it's 8 hours to get you by, if it's one whole day, that's how you start. And whenever you get when you achieve that, then you put that under your belt and you take pride of that. And getting that sober life beats anything I've ever done. We never talked about some of the not an addiction, but something else that maybe on the next one we could talk about that one. Yeah,
Sure, sounds good. Don, a closing thought
yeah.
I'd like to leave with the listeners, and I know you and I have talked about this, so you would concur with me, but they're worth it. They're worth it. They're worth getting sober for.
Oh,
Believe me,
100%.
they're
That is
worth fighting for.
it is. It
Their
is.
life has value, their life has worth. They as a person are worth it. And no matter what they've done, no matter the decisions that they've made, they're forgivable.
Exactly, exactly. And life was intended in the beginning, before all the stresses came in and all the problems of the world mounted on your shoulder. Life was intended to be lived in a sober way, right? And to enjoy, and like the gift of life is just living itself, right? And whatever stress makes people do what they do, it's understandable. But if you're looking for a way out, if you're looking for a better way of living, then you go sober for sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Dawn. Thanks for your encouragement. Thanks for your time. Thanks for your
Thank you,
transparency
sir.
and
Yeah, I
vulnerability.
really appreciate it. It's always a pleasure chatting with you.
You're welcome. It's good to see you, Dawn. Take care.
You too. Take care.